Hey guys, it's Nicole. I'm back with another video, and today's video is going to be that classic book that I've been talking about that I finally finished. But before I get into today's book, I wanted to say if you have subscribed to my channel at any point since I've had my channel, thank you so much. All of your support, every single one of you being here and still being here is so meaningful to me. If you haven't subscribed, I'm not upset with you. Just go ahead and click that subscribe button. It costs absolutely nothing and you'll get notified every time I upload new videos. Even though I have a schedule, you never know if that might change, so there is no downside to subscribing. If you end up enjoying this video, please like, comment, and share. I always want to hear your thoughts, and please share this video. That's how things get around. Word of mouth is so powerful. Getting into a little bit of personal news, I've mentioned for a while now that things in my life are going to be changing, and they are finally happening. It has been months in the work. It has just taken this long for things to finally fall into place. But the news, the whole thing that's changing in my life soon is that I am moving. I live in Florida. I grew up here and nothing wrong with it. I mean, everyone likes what they like. I personally don't love living in Florida. It's fine. Like, nothing wrong with it for other people per se, but I'm moving to a state that I have wanted to move to for so many years, and I'm so excited. And I'm gonna share, like, not too much, but I want to share a little bit about, like, where I'm gonna be and like why I'm moving there, and all the new exciting things that are going to be happening. So that is going to be taking up a lot of my time and energy in the coming weeks and a couple of months. I don't know if I'll vlog any of it. It's kind of hard for me to remember to do anything. It's like I'm in the middle of something and then I'm like, oh, maybe I should have been vlogging that. And then I don't think of it until I'm like asleep that night, and then it's like way too late. So I don't know if I'll get to do that, but I'll at least try to do like a new place tour or something like that, just to kind of show what I'll be working with. And yeah, it's gonna be really great. The other thing that's happening is I'm also going on vacation really soon. I did not intend for those two things to be happening at the exact same time, but they now are. And it is what it is, because the vacation I paid for like almost a year ago, so it's already in. I can't undo it. So I'm going on vacation in the middle of moving. So it is what it is. And so I will kind of talk about that a little bit when I get back, especially because I will be doing a lot of book related things on my vacation, and I'll reveal where I'm going once I come back. But those are some like big updates that are just kind of happening in my life, and I cannot wait to share a lot of it with you. But that being said, going ahead and getting into the book that we're talking about today, I finished this book literally as of recording last night. And it's not that it took me so long to read because I didn't like it. It was just, there's just a lot of things going on, and as I just mentioned, and it can be hard to be able to read consistently and a lot. Like, sometimes I only have time to read like one chapter at a time, and so like that's just kind of how things worked. So it did take me a bit to read this book only because of that, and I can't wait to talk about it. So today's video is going to be about Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I finally read it. I think it was on my Wuthering Heights video. At least one person commented that Pride and Prejudice was definitely one book I should read and talk about, and finally got to it, and I'm so happy I did. So I was originally on a Bronte sister kick. I read Wuthering Heights, and then I read only one of Charlotte Bronte's books, Jane Eyre. And then my next book that I was going to read was going to be one of Anne Bronte's books. I have two, and I hadn't decided which one. But then I had this in my to be read pile for so long, and the books that I ordered from Anne Bronte like hadn't got here yet, and because sometimes you can't just find them in bookstores, so I had to order it online. So I was like, well, I have Pride and Prejudice now, so let's just go ahead and read it. I got this version, and when I say this version, I mean this particular print with this type of cover. There's all different kinds. This version was kind of like fun for me because it had illustrations, not all the time throughout the book, like not every single page, but You can see there's a lot of just like regular words, but then it had some illustrations, and I liked that mostly because it just kind of put me in like the thought process, like the headspace of like, oh, we're in like this era, this is what people were dressing like. And so that was really fun. I'm really glad I got this version because of that. And I got this version, I didn't know it had illustrations. I just got it because the cover, I just love the cover so much. Like, it may be a little bit like extra, a little bit more dramatic, a little bit silly or something. I just really like the colors, honestly. That was the main reason I got this version, is I just really liked the colors. And that may seem so superficial, but I don't care because it's my book. And it is a complete and unabridged version. It does say that on the back of the book. So this is like an original text, kind of. So before I get into my thoughts on the book, which I did kind of mention I loved it, and then I will go into why I loved it. I don't really think I had any issues with it, but maybe if I think of something, we'll get there. Anyways, totally getting off track. Sorry for all that. I am going to read the back just in case there's anybody out there that's never heard of Pride and Prejudice, or maybe they read it so long ago they kind of don't really remember what it's about at all. So just in case, I'm going to read the back. Pride and Prejudice, which opens with one of the most famous sentences in English literature, is an ironic novel of manners. In it, the garrulous and empty-headed Mrs. Bennet has only one aim, that of finding a good match for each of her 5 daughters. In this, she is mocked by her cynical and indolent husband. With its wit and social precision, and above all, its irresistible heroine, Pride and Prejudice has proved one of the most enduringly popular novels in the English language. So that gives a little bit of what the book is about. It's mostly like the main character, Elizabeth, like it's all told from her perspective, and yes, like it's kind of a good description. Like Mrs. Bennet is like the whole point of the book, of what we're watching, is Mrs. Bennet in her attempt to get all of her 5 daughters married. So that is kind of like the point of the book. But like when it comes to what happens in the book, you know, Elizabeth is the second oldest, and she's the one we get the perspective from, and she's it's really fun because she's more like her father than her mother, and like it describes on the back of the book, her mother is not she kind of needs to be brought back down to earth, I guess you could say. And her husband, you know, Mr. Bennet, he's kind of like, she just does her own thing. And Elizabeth is more like that. So it's really a novel about this family, the Bennets, of all of their daughters finding their way through social manners and social expectations, and trying to get married, basically. I do want to say, I did absolutely love this book. I so enjoyed reading it. It was so much fun. I think it was so much fun for me, especially reading Mr. Bennet and Elizabeth, because their characters are so sarcastic and unserious, and it's so much fun because when you think of people in like the 1800s or so, it just always feels like, especially when they're dressed like the illustrations like showed, like this, like you think them to be like so serious, right? Like there's no such thing as messing around. Everybody's about, you know, it's about money and figures and marrying people off and what's going on here and this and that. And so I didn't know what I was in for. So when I first started reading the book, Mr. Bennet is so sarcastic. He is so sarcastic, and I honestly love it so much, and it feels like his coping mechanism to deal with his wife, Mrs. Bennet. It's so great. So I did absolutely love reading the book, especially with those 2 characters, and of course the love story that comes about between Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth. That doesn't feel like a spoiler. This book has been around for a very long time, and I think that everybody knows that Mr. Darcy is a love interest, and so I don't think that's a spoiler, especially because there's movies out about it. So before I get into any more of my thoughts, I do want to read the first page just so anyone who hasn't read the book or even seen any of the movies can kind of get a hint of what this may sound like, should you decide to read it, or if you're just listening to this video to find out what the book is about. And I will have some thoughts of mine and maybe some thoughts on some spoilers, so we'll get there. But each of the pages, at least in this version of the book, because again, like I said, I picked this version just because I like the cover, but it does start out with an illustration on this side. All of them is just says chapter 1 or chapter 2 or anything, and there's no other little images or illustrations there. It's just the word, chapter 1. Just gonna read the first page. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. However little known the feelings or views of such a man may be on his first entering a neighborhood, this truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he is considered as the rightful property of some one or other of their daughters. "My dear Mr. Bennet," said his lady to him one day, "have you heard that Netherfield Park is let at last?" Mr. Bennet replied that he had not. "But it is," returned she, "for Mrs. Long has just been there and she told me all about it." Mr. Bennet made no answer. "Do you not want to know who has taken it?" cried his wife impatiently. "You want to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it." This was invitation enough. "Why, my dear, you must know. Mrs. Long says that Netherfield is taken by a young man of large fortune from the north of England, that he came down on Monday in a chaise and four to see the place, and was so much delighted with it that he agreed with Mr. Morris immediately that he is to take possession before Michaelmas, and some of his servants are to be in the house by the end of the week." "What is his name?" "Bingley." "Is he married or single?" "Oh, single, my dear, to be sure. A single man of large fortune, 4,000 or 5,000 a year. What a fine thing for our girls." "How so? How can it affect them?" "My dear Mr. Bennet," replied his wife, "how can you be so tiresome? You must know that I am thinking of his marrying one of them." "Is that his design in settling here?" "Design? Nonsense! How can you talk so? But it is very likely that he may fall in love with one of them, and therefore you must invite him as soon as he comes." "I see no occasion for that. You and the girls may go, or you may send them by themselves, which perhaps will be still better, for as you are as handsome as any of them, Mr. Bingley might like you the best of the party." "My dear, you flatter me. I certainly have had my share of beauty, but I do not pretend to be anything extraordinary now. When a woman has 5 grown-up daughters, she ought to give over thinking of her own beauty." That's pretty much the first page. It's a very long conversation between Mr. Bennet and Mrs. Bennet. But yeah, that's what it sounds like for anyone who hasn't read it, or in case you're curious, it's a little bit of a taste. And so maybe that, caught your attention or made you go, "Oh yeah, I do want to read that. I want to know more." So you should go check it out if you do. But getting into a little bit of my actual thoughts on the book, I think that, first of all, I can understand why this is such a popular book. It's very easy to read. Like, when you're reading texts from different eras, it can be a little bit difficult because the way the language is, the structure, the grammar, the words used, a lot of it is so vastly different to what we speak with today. Like it's really hard. It is. And people will say, well, you just have to it's not that hard. You just read it. If you don't know a word, you look it up. But it's not that simple. Sometimes there's structural differences in the language, in the way that they spoke English in different eras, that it's like, okay, well, I'm not really sure what that means because none of those words in that order are things that would be said today. So what exactly does that mean? But to me, this one felt like one of the more easier books to read. I mean, I read that entire first page and all of it made sense. None of it was like, I need to go back and reread that again. What exactly did that mean? And I felt that way pretty much the whole book. I mean, there were a couple of words here and there, don't get me wrong, that I definitely had to look up because I don't know every word. So there was that, but I felt like this was such an easy book to read, and so I can see why for that reason, why it's still so popular. But I can also see why it's so popular, not even just for the love story between Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth, because don't get me wrong, I can see why it has lasted through the ages. But there is just something so entertaining about the way Elizabeth narrates most of the story. Like, as you saw, like, we got a little bit of this conversation between two characters where Elizabeth is not even present, so she's not necessarily the narrator the whole time, but she pretty much is. Like, pretty much the entire book is mostly from her perspective. We get the characters' perspective, like different characters' perspectives in some different parts of the book. For the most part, it's her. And she just is such an entertaining narrator. And I'm going to bring it back to what I was briefly mentioning before about how sarcastic she is. And even in that first page, you can kind of tell Mr. Bennet is like pulling his wife's leg. Like, he's intentionally kind of poking at her because of how ridiculous he thinks she's being. And it's not because he doesn't respect his wife or think highly of what, you know, she thinks. I think it's just how the two of them in their married relationship talk to each other. And a lot of that is stuff Elizabeth picked up. And since she's the one that narrates the story, she is very unserious throughout the whole book. And that's what makes it, to me, probably so entertaining for so many generations. Something else I loved about the book was it wasn't just entertaining, right? Like, it was fun to read. I was laughing, giggling through a lot of parts of this. And then, of course, there's the romance. And so all of that was incredibly entertaining and so fun to read. But the other thing that was really great about it was there was a lot of times where certain character flaws that didn't necessarily had to be named or pointed out very decidedly were highlighted in such a way that it was like, this is human nature. Look at this character with this incredible character flaw, but it's just true to human nature. And we don't usually say much about it because they're not necessarily hurting anybody. It's part of who they are. And so here's this character, here's their flaws, and they get highlighted in some way based on whatever action the character took. And here's how we deal with the fallout, you know? And there are a good amount of characters in this book. Like, I mean, Elizabeth has 4 other sisters, you know, and then there's her parents, and then you get Mr. Darcy and Bingley, who was mentioned in the beginning, and then there's several other people that come into play. And all of them at one point or another get praised immensely for something of their character that is, you know, maybe they're insanely beautiful or incredibly polite or very sociable, you know, and so they get praised in such a high way. And then almost all of them, their flaws get highlighted very, very noticeably as well, even if it's not necessarily pointed out like by using a word and saying like, oh, she's very proud, like pride. They don't say that. Like, I mean, there's 1 or 2 times where other people will talk about the others like that, like behind their backs, like we do. We talk about people behind our backs. But a lot of time it's just kind of highlighted, you know? So I think that it was really great, honestly, social commentary on, you know, people's great attributes and their flaws, and especially the way other people talk about, you know, other people and their flaws, like how we gossip about, oh, she is so annoying, she's such a chatterbox, she will never stop talking, you know, and then, but yet we will never say anything to their face. And this was a really great representation of that. And so I really appreciated that. I thought it was very simple, but also something very true to human nature. When I finished this book, I have to admit, when I finished this book, I was thinking about it, and I was like, of the classics I've read recently, Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre, and now Pride and Prejudice, I have to admit, and this has nothing, this is nothing against Jane Austen. It's genuinely not. It's personal preference. For me, personally, if I had to put like a favorite of like the classics that I've read, like most favorite to least favorite of the 3, Pride and Prejudice is kind of at the bottom. Not because of the way she writes or anything like that. It was personal. So my favorite is Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre is at the moment my favorite book like ever. And I'm sure in time it might get replaced because I'm constantly reading and things are always just going to be changing. But right now, as of today, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte is like my favorite novel of all time. I absolutely love it. And then I love Wuthering Heights. It's It's such a crazy book, but it's also so good. And then I do love Pride and Prejudice. Do not get me wrong. I am not trying to slander the book or say that Jane Austen is a terrible writer. She's not. She's a really great writer. I love the way that she wrote this book. I really do. But I will say that for me, with specifically Charlotte Bronte, she writes her unlikable characters in a way that we are made to understand why the unlikable characters are the way they are, in Jane Eyre specifically. And for some reason I like that, because I'm like, oh, I don't like this character. I don't like the way they are. But there's something about them because of why they're like this, that it just makes it more intriguing for me. It pulls me in more, honestly, because even if I don't like them, I want to see more of them. I want to see more of what happens with them. I want to know, do they ever change? Or are they just going to always be this way? And we just know that they are this horrible, and it's just because of the way they are. And Emily Bronte in Wuthering Heights is very, very similar. If you've ever read it or ever seen any movie adaptations, and I'm just going to see if you've ever read it, because especially because the latest movie adaptation of Wuthering Heights is drawing some controversy. And I will make a video on that if I do have the time. But they write their characters that are unlikable in a way that you understand why they became so unlikable. And it just makes them all the more interesting. And I love that. Jane Austen's characters that you don't like are just unlikable. There is no understanding. They're just annoying or prideful or narcissistic, and there's no reason for it. No one ever says anything. No one ever tries to stay away from them whenever they're saying these horrible things, or tries to walk away when they're saying these horrible things. No, they just put up with it. So you have to constantly read whenever a character is being unbearable. Namely, Lydia. Lydia in Pride and Prejudice, I believe, is the youngest sister. I actually thought she was like the second youngest sister, but I think she's the youngest sister. She is the most unbearable character I have ever read in a book in my entire life. She is so unlikable. She is so narcissistic, and she gets it from her mother, Mrs. Bennet, and I just can't stand her. And then for like 2 entire pages, she goes on and on and on about how wonderful things are for her and how awful things must be for the people she's talking to. And I'm like, I just can't stand this. And so that's a personal complaint. You know, I'm not saying that Jane Austen wrote this terribly and that Lydia sucks and that it's this. I'm saying, personally, it is so hard for me to read at least 2 pages of dialogue from a character that I cannot stand. And there's no understanding behind it. There's no rhyme or reason why, other than her mother is like this, and that's it. And she's horrible, and we all have to listen to her. And Elizabeth won't just walk away when she starts saying these horrible things to her face, and she never says anything. And I'm like, this is horrendous. But then again, it's probably really true to life. So I don't know. It's a personal complaint, but that is why, for me, it does go kind of towards the bottom of favoritism of classic novels. But that's really my general thoughts on Pride and Prejudice. I know I didn't talk much about the romance between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. I thought it was really beautiful. Going into that a little bit before I end the video, because I'm really not going to talk about many like huge spoilers, because I think I've made this video long enough. Going into Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy's romance a little bit, I think it is such a great story. It really is. 2 people, and you can consider this a spoiler or not, just in case, maybe if you do consider this a spoiler, you might want to close the video. 2 people who, when they first see each other, immediately can't stand each other. Like, they hear words out of the other's mouth for the very first time and immediately don't want anything to do with the other. Then they happen to constantly end up in similar spaces with each other. So they're forced proximity, basically. And over time, one of them, Mr. Darcy, goes first, starts to develop actual romantic feelings for someone, because And the saying is true. Love and hate are incredibly similar feelings. And so if you feel one thing, you can easily feel the other. And that's kind of what happened there. Mr. Darcy all of a sudden one day realized, he's like, I actually feel affection for her. Someone that I could not stand, didn't even want to look at, not even a few weeks ago. And she feels the same way for much longer than he did. But then when they come together at the end and eventually, you know, confess to each other their actual love for each other, they're both like, isn't it so funny how we both could not stand each other at first, and yet now here we are, just absolutely completely in love and obsessed with each other. And it's a great story. The other wonderful part of their romance is, I love the way, and it's only for like a couple chapters because really their romance ends basically. We finally get them together at the end of the book, of course, is the way that the two of them are so obsessed with each other and stand up for each other, to other people especially, you know, because the whole title of the book, sorry, it feels like there's a hair on my face. The whole title of the book, Pride and Prejudice, is about Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth. Mr. Darcy was incredibly prideful when he was first introduced in the book. I don't know if he's a nobleman or a lord or something, but he's a little higher up in society, was raised that way, and is incredibly prideful, pretty much spoiled, and looks down on people. Elizabeth is incredibly prejudiced. She gets one first opinion of somebody and immediately has very strong opinions, especially negative opinions when she's prejudiced against somebody. And they're almost impossible to change. Not impossible, but almost. And both of them help the other realize this flaw of theirs, and it kind of helps them fall in love with each other. That is something beautiful in their romance. I do love it. It's forced proximity, but also they both taught each other something, and in it gained so much respect for the other that they're so obsessed with each other by the end of the book and just defending each other to anyone outside of the couple. Because there are people in society that look at both of them a little strangely for their flaws. Like, he's a very prideful man and she is something else too. But then they both defend the other to other people because they're like, well, I have my own flaws, so. And it is a really, really beautiful romance, and I can absolutely see why it has stood the test of time and why people still love the book today, especially just the story, just knowing it, even if, you know, in whatever film adaptations, I don't know how much they change in the story. So those are my thoughts on Pride and Prejudice. I'm so happy I got to read it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, hearing my thoughts a little bit, and if you have not read Pride and Prejudice, maybe this inspired you to go check it out. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't. Who knows? But hopefully the next classic I'll be reading is one of Anne Bronte's books. She is, I don't want to say the third Bronte sister, because from what I've read, she's actually pretty underrated. But she is the third Bronte sister, and I'm not going to say which book I'm going to read yet, but that will be the next classic I'm reading. So look for that video when I finally finish that one and can make a video about it. But I hopefully will not be interrupted in my recording schedule coming up. Hopefully it should just be, you know, you guys still get the same videos. I just have to change the dates that I make the videos. So have no fear, I will be here. But that is all for this week's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.